The warning lights flashed red across every screen in the orbital station. Lieutenant Nari stared at her monitor, her hands frozen above the keyboard. She had been tracking what she thought was a meteor shower. Now she knew better. "Captain Do-yoon, you need to see this," she said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. Do-yoon walked over from his station near the window. He was a tall man with gray streaks in his black hair. The lines on his face told stories of battles fought long ago. He had come to New Gangwa to forget those stories, to farm, to live quietly, to finally sleep without nightmares. "What am I looking at?" he asked. 37 ships. They just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're in orbit around our moon. Nari's fingers danced across the controls. "They're big, sir. Much bigger than our colony ships." Do-yoon felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was a familiar feeling. The same feeling he had gotten right before the Battle of Olympus Mons. 15 years ago, the feeling that said his peaceful life was over. "Send a message to Governor Kiwon. Tell him we have visitors." Do-yoon leaned closer to the screen. "And get me every detail about those ships." Down on the planet's surface, Kiwon was having breakfast with his daughter when the call came. He was a thin man who wore glasses and preferred talking to fighting. He had built this colony through patience and careful planning. 20,000 people now called New Gangwa home. They grew food. They raised families. They were happy. "Unknown ships?" Kiwon repeated into his communicator. "Are you sure they're not from Earth?" "Positive, sir." Do-yoon's voice crackled through the speaker. "These designs are nothing I've ever seen. And sir, they're powering up weapons." Kiwon set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. "I'll prepare a diplomatic message. We'll try to talk to them. With respect, Governor, I recommend we go to alert status. Get people to the shelters. Let's not panic, Captain. We're a farming colony. We have nothing they could want. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." Do-yoon closed his eyes. He had heard those exact words before. On Mars. Right before the rebels attacked the civilian sector. Back when everyone thought the war would be short and clean. "Yes, sir," he said. "But I'm bringing our defense grid online. Just in case." The message from the alien ships arrived 3 hours later. It was translated automatically by their computers. The voice that spoke was rough, like rocks grinding together. "Attention, human settlement. You are now in territory claimed by the Velrathi Empire. You will surrender immediately. You will provide all resources and labor to the Empire. Resistance will result in complete destruction. You have 6 of your hours to comply." Nari played the message 3 times for Do-yoon. Each time, his jaw got tighter. "Get me Governor Kiwon," he said quietly. When Kiwon heard the message, his face went pale. "This can't be real. We're a registered colony. This is an act of war against Earth." "They don't care," Do-yoon said. "Governor, we need to evacuate the cities. We need to arm the militia. We need to negotiate," Kiwon interrupted. "I'll send them a response. We'll offer to share resources. We'll explain that Earth will defend us if they attack." Do-yoon wanted to scream. He wanted to shake the governor and make him understand. But Kiwon was a good man who had never seen war. He still believed words could stop bullets. "Do what you think is best, Governor," Do-yoon said. "But I'm going to prepare for the worst." He cut the connection and turned to his crew. There were 12 of them in the orbital station. Most were young. They had trained for emergencies, but never fought a real battle. "Listen up," Do-yoon said. "I need volunteers to stay at their posts if shooting starts. No one will think less of you if you want to evacuate to the planet. This isn't your fight." Nari stood up first. "I'm staying." One by one, the others rose. They were afraid. Do-yoon could see it in their eyes. But they were also determined. "Good," he said, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. "Nari, send a message on all frequencies. Tell anyone listening that New Gangwa is under attack. Get it to Earth, to the colonies, to anyone who will hear it." What should the message say? Do-yoon thought about his farm down on the planet. About the apple trees he had planted. About the life he would probably never see again. Tell them we remember how to fight, he said. Down on New Gangwa, word was spreading fast. In the town of Sabiok, a woman named Bora heard the news from her neighbor. She was working in her garden, dirt under her fingernails, when her communicator buzzed. Aliens, she said, standing up slowly. You're joking. But the neighbor wasn't joking. Bora walked into her house and opened a closet in the back bedroom. Behind the winter coats was a locked metal case. She hadn't opened it in 10 years. Her hands shook as she entered the code. Inside was her old rifle. The one she had carried through 3 years of Martian tunnels. The one that had saved her life 47 times. She had promised herself she would never touch it again. So much for promises, she muttered, checking the weapon's condition. It was still perfect. She had cleaned it obsessively, even though she swore she'd never use it. Across the colony, similar scenes were playing out. Old soldiers were opening old cases. Veterans were calling each other, using codes and phrases from the war. A man named Sunho, who now taught history at the local school, was drawing maps and planning defensive positions. They had all come to New Gangwa for the same reason: to escape the war, to forget the killing, to be something other than soldiers. But the war had found them anyway. Governor Kiwan sent his diplomatic message. It was polite and reasonable. It offered compromise and cooperation. It explained that humanity was protected by treaties and laws. The Velrathi response came in the form of plasma fire. 3 beams of superheated energy struck the northern continent. 2 farms were vaporized instantly. 83 people died in less than a second. The attack was meant to be a demonstration, a way to show the humans they were serious. The Velrathi had done this to 47 other species. It always worked. The aliens would see the power, understand their weakness, and surrender. But the Velrathi had made a mistake. They had studied human biology and found it wanting. They had reviewed human diplomatic messages and found them soft. They had assumed, like so many before them, that a desire for peace meant an inability to fight. They had never fought humans before. They didn't know about Mars, about Earth's bloody history, about the fact that every human on New Gangwa had lived through a war that made their own conflicts look like children's games. When the plasma beams hit, Captain Doyun didn't hesitate. He had given peace a chance. Now it was time for the alternative. All defense batteries, he said into his communicator, his voice calm and cold. Weapons free. Fire at will. The orbital station's railguns opened up, hurling metal slugs at relativistic speeds toward the Velrathi fleet. The missiles launched, their engines burning bright in the darkness of space. On the ground, Sunho stood in the town square with 300 other veterans. They were old. They were tired. They had wanted nothing more than to be farmers and teachers and parents. But the universe had other plans. You all know what to do, Sunho said, his voice carrying across the crowd. You remember your training. You remember Mars. Someone in the crowd shouted, Remember Mars. Others took up the cry. Remember Mars. Remember Mars. Sunho smiled grimly. It wasn't the smile of a teacher or a farmer. It was the smile of a man who had killed 200 enemy soldiers and learned to sleep at night anyway. Let's show these lizards what happens, he said, when you wake up humanity's ghosts. The Velrathi dropships descended through New Gangwa's atmosphere like falling meteors. Inside the lead ship, Commander Thalen watched the landscape below with satisfaction. The attack on the northern farms had been perfect, precise, terrifying. The humans would surrender within the day. Prepare for landing, he ordered his troops. Remember the protocols. Honor in victory, swift domination. The humans are fragile creatures. They will break easily. His soldiers clicked their claws in acknowledgement. They were proud warriors of the Velrathi Empire, conquerors of 47 worlds. This would be another easy victory to add to their records. The ships landed in an open field outside the town of Sabiok. The ramps lowered. 200 Velrathi soldiers marched out in perfect formation, their scales gleaming in the sunlight. Their weapons held high. They expected to see terrified humans running. Instead, they saw empty streets. "Advance," Thalen commanded. "Find the population center. They must be hiding." The formation moved forward, maintaining their neat lines. This was how Velrathi warfare worked. Organized, honorable, predictable. The first explosion came from underground. An improvised mine made from farming chemicals detonated beneath the lead squad. 6 Velrathi soldiers were thrown into the air, their armor shredded. Before Thalen could order a response, gunfire erupted from the buildings. Not random fire, but concentrated bursts aimed at weak points in their armor. Humans had studied the broadcasts the Velrathi sent. They knew where to shoot. "Return fire," Thalen shouted. "Maintain formation." But maintaining formation meant standing in the open. Within seconds, 20 more Velrathi were down. The humans weren't fighting like the other species the Empire had conquered. They weren't standing in rows. They weren't announcing their positions. They were hiding, moving, shooting, and disappearing. From a third-floor window, Bora lined up her shot. She had been watching the Velrathi commander through her scope for 30 seconds. Watching him bark orders. Watching him stand tall and proud. "Amateur," she whispered, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled 800 meters and punched through Thalen's throat, right where his armor plates separated. He fell without a sound. Bora was already moving, climbing down the building's back stairs before the Velrathi even located her window. Rule number 1. From Mars. Never stay where you shoot from. Without their commander, the Velrathi formation began to break. They were trained for honorable combat, not urban warfare. Not invisible enemies who used dirty tricks and explosive traps. Sunho watched from his command post in the basement of the old school. He had 30 veterans with him, coordinating the defense through old military radios they had kept hidden in basements and barns. "Sector 3. How are you holding?" he asked. "They're trying to flank us," a voice responded. It was Yuna, an engineer who had spent the last 6 hours turning farming equipment into weapons. But they move so slowly. They announce every maneuver. It's like fighting training dummies. "Don't get cocky," Sunho warned. "They'll adapt. Hit them hard now while they're confused." Across the town, small groups of human fighters were executing tactics the Velrathi had never encountered. They used the sewers to move unseen. They fired from one position and retreated before the enemy could respond. They set traps using everyday materials, fertilizer bombs, electrified water, even sharpened farming tools rigged as spring-loaded spears. One group of Velrathi soldiers found themselves in a warehouse. The lights went out. When they turned on their night vision, they saw movement everywhere. But it wasn't humans, it was clothes hanging on wires, swaying in the wind from open doors. While they were distracted, actual humans tossed grenades through the windows and sealed the doors. The Velrathi were learning a terrible lesson. Honor meant nothing when your enemy fought to survive. Rules were luxuries for species that had never faced extinction. By nightfall, the landing force of 200 was down to 90. They had retreated to their ships, setting up a defensive perimeter. They had expected to be celebrating in the human governor's mansion by now. Instead, they were huddled behind energy shields, jumping at every shadow. In orbit, the Velrathi fleet commander received Thalen's final report, recorded just before he died. "They fight without honor," Thalen's voice said, wet and gasping. "They use cowardly tactics. They hide and strike from darkness. They do not announce their attacks. They do not give quarter. These are not soldiers." The fleet commander, a veteran named Korthos, felt something he hadn't experienced in 20 years of conquest. Uncertainty. "Send reinforcements," he ordered. 500 soldiers, heavy armor. "Tell them to expect guerrilla resistance." His tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, the human orbital station destroyed 3 of our support ships before we silenced them. And we're detecting strange transmissions leaving the system. They might be calling for help." "From whom?" Korthos asked. "Their homeworld is weeks away. By the time help arrives, this will be over. He stared at the planet below. Send the reinforcements. But tell them to be careful. These humans are more dangerous than our intelligence suggested. On New Gangwa, the first night of war passed slowly. Bora sat in a ruined apartment building, cleaning her rifle. She had fired 43 shots today. She didn't miss. She never missed. A younger woman named Jury sat beside her. Jury had been a musician before today. Now she held a rifle with shaking hands. How do you do it? Jury asked quietly. How do you kill so easily? Bora didn't look up from her weapon. I don't kill easily. I kill efficiently. There's a difference. But you're so calm. I'm not calm. I'm focused. Bora finally met the girl's eyes. You want to know the secret? It's simple. I'm more afraid of my friends dying than I am of becoming a monster. So I became a monster to keep them alive. Jury was quiet for a moment. Is that what happened on Mars? Jury was quiet. Is that what happened on Mars? That's what happens everywhere humans fight for survival, Bora said. We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest. But we're the most stubborn. We don't know how to quit. She stood up and checked her ammunition. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be worse. In the school basement, Sun Ho was marking positions on a map when Governor Kiwan arrived. The governor looked like he had aged 10 years in one day. His eyes were red from crying. This is my fault, Kiwan said. I should have listened to you. Should have evacuated. Stop, Sun Ho interrupted. You did what you thought was right. You tried for peace. There's no shame in that. But 83 people died because 83 people died because the Velrothi are killers, Sun Ho said firmly. That's not on you. What matters now is what we do next. Kiwan looked at the map, covered in tactical markings and defensive positions. Can we win? Sun Ho considered lying, considered offering false hope, but Kiwan deserved the truth. With what we have, we can hold them off for a week, maybe 2. We can make them bleed for every meter. We can make them regret ever hearing about New Gangwa. He pointed to the sky. But unless help arrives, we can't win. There are too many of them. Then why fight at all? Sun Ho smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Because every minute we hold out is another minute for the message to reach Earth. Another minute for the fleet to mobilize. And because I want these lizards to remember us, when they go back to their empire, I want them to wake up screaming. I want them to tell their children scary stories about the humans who wouldn't die. That's dark, Kiwan said softly. War is dark, Sun Ho replied. But we're good at it. We've had a lot of practice. Above the planet, in the wreckage of the orbital station, Captain Doyun floated through the broken corridors. The station had taken hits from the Velrothi fleet. Life support was failing. Half his crew was dead, including Lieutenant Nari, who had died at her post trying to get one more message out. But they had succeeded. The messages had been sent. Earth would know. The colonies would know. Help would come. Doyun pulled himself to the communications room. With dying power, he recorded one final message. This is Captain Doyun of New Gangwa. If anyone hears this, we are still fighting. The Velrothi thought we would break. They were wrong. He coughed, tasting blood. The station's air was running out. Tell Earth we held the line. Tell them we remembered our training. Tell them. He paused, thinking of his apple trees. Tell them we wanted peace. But we haven't forgotten how to make war. He sent the message on repeat and closed his eyes. Around him, the stars shone through the cracks in the hull. It was beautiful. The Velrothi reinforcements landed the next morning. 500 fresh soldiers with heavy weapons and armored vehicles. They were determined not to make the same mistakes as the first wave. But the humans had spent the night preparing new traps, new ambushes, new horrors. As the sun rose over Sabyok, Bora took her position in a new building. She checked her rifle and looked at the incoming enemy. Round 2, she said to herself. Let's teach them lesson number 2. The message from New Gangwa reached Earth 17 days after the attack began. It traveled through relay stations, automated buoys, and emergency channels. By the time it arrived at United Earth Defense Force headquarters, it had passed through 40 different computers. Admiral Taeyang was in a planning meeting when his aide burst through the door. The young man's face was pale. "Sir, we have a priority alert. New Ganghwa is under attack." The room went silent. Taeyang stood slowly. He was a stocky man with gray hair and scars on his hands from the Mars War. He had lost his wife and son on Mars. In a rebel attack on a civilian shelter, he had spent the last 15 years making sure it never happened again. "Details," he said quietly, too quietly. His staff knew that tone. It meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Alien force. Unknown species, calling themselves Velrathi. They attacked without warning. Civilian casualties reported. Captain Doyun's last message says they're still fighting but need help immediately. Taeyang's jaw tightened. New Ganghwa. A colony full of veterans who had earned their peace, who had paid for their quiet lives with blood and nightmares. "Get me Colonel Jinha. Get me the Third Fleet. Get me every ship that can fight and every Marine that can shoot." He turned to his communications officer. "And send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them humanity is going to war." "Sir, we need approval from—" "I don't care about approval," Taeyang interrupted. "Those are our people. Our veterans. They went to that colony to farm and raise families. And now, they're fighting for their lives." He slammed his hand on the table. "We're going. Now. Anyone who has a problem with that can file a complaint after I bring our people home." Across Earth, the mobilization began. It was fast. Impossibly fast by galactic standards. Other species took months to prepare their fleets for war. Humanity had learned the hard way that speed meant survival. Ships that had been in dock for maintenance were rushed through repairs. Crews that had been on leave were recalled. Weapons that had been in storage were loaded and armed. The entire Third Fleet's 60 combat ships was ready to depart in 72 hours. Colonel Jinha watched from the loading bay as his Marines boarded the transport ships. He was a lean man with cold eyes and a reputation for leading from the front. He had trained these soldiers, he knew each of their names, and he was about to ask them to jump from orbit onto a hostile planet to save people they'd never met. "Listen up," he told them over the ship's speakers. "We're heading to New Ganghwa. It's a farming colony. Nice place. Quiet. Full of veterans who retired after Mars." He paused. 3 weeks ago, aliens attacked them. The aliens thought farmers would be easy targets. They were wrong. A cheer went up from the Marines. "The colonists have been holding them off, but they need help. So we're going to do an orbital drop. At night. In hostile territory. With no backup." He smiled coldly. "You know, Tuesday." More cheers. The Marines were checking their gear, loading ammunition, preparing for the kind of fight that gave other species nightmares. "Rules of engagement are simple," Jinna continued. "Anyone shooting at you, shoot back. Anyone shooting at civilians, shoot first. We're not there to take prisoners or make friends. We're there to get our people out and teach these Velrathi what happens when you attack humans." Dr. Isuel stood at the back of the bay, watching the preparations. She was a military psychologist, assigned to make sure the soldiers didn't lose themselves in the violence. She had studied the Mars War extensively. She knew what happened when soldiers went too far. She also knew that sometimes, going too far was the only way to survive. "Colonel," she said quietly as he passed. "These men are angry. I can see it. They're going to be brutal." "Good," Jinha replied. "I don't need gentle, I need effective." "There's a difference between effective and excessive." Jinha stopped and looked at her. "Doctor, I respect your job. But right now, my job is to save 20,000 people from aliens who think humans are weak. If that means my Marines are brutal, so be it. We can deal with the trauma later. First, we have to make sure there's a later." The Third Fleet departed Earth on a Tuesday morning. 60 ships carrying 10,000 Marines, fighter pilots, and support personnel. The largest military operation since the Mars War. On the command ship, Admiral Taeyang studied the reports from New Ganghwa. The news wasn't good. The colonists were still fighting, but they were running out of ammunition and supplies. The Velrathi had landed 3,000 soldiers and were slowly taking territory, but the casualty reports were interesting. Very interesting. They're killing Velrathi at a rate of 10 to 1, his tactical officer said. The aliens have lost over 1,000 soldiers. The humans have lost 93 fighters. What about civilians? Taeyang asked. 347 dead, mostly from the initial orbital bombardment. Taeyang closed his eyes. 347 people who had gone to New Gangwa for peace, who had survived the Mars war only to die on a farm planet. How long until we arrive? He asked. 11 days at maximum speed. Make it 10, Taeyang said. I don't care if we burn out the engines. Get us there in 10 days. The message Taeyang sent to the Galactic Council was simple and direct. It was also copied to every species that had communications with humanity. The message read, "To all galactic powers, humanity has been attacked without provocation. Our colony of New Gangwa is under assault by the Velrathi Empire. We are responding with military force. This is not a request for permission. This is a notification of action. Any species that interferes will be considered hostile. Humanity protects its own." The response from the Council was immediate and panicked. They sent diplomatic messages, demanding that humanity stand down. They cited treaties and laws. They warned of consequences. Taeyang deleted every message without reading them. The Velrathi Empire, however, sent a different kind of message. It was addressed directly to the human admiral. "You are making a mistake." The message said, "Your colonists are weak. Your species is young and fragile. If you send your fleet to New Gangwa, we will destroy it. Then we will come to Earth. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." Taeyang read the message 3 times. Then, he composed his response. "You attacked civilians. You killed families. You thought we were weak." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You're about to learn that humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other before we reached the stars. We've perfected warfare in ways you can't imagine. We've committed atrocities that would make your empire weep. And we've learned to live with the nightmares." He hit send. "See you soon." On New Gangwa, Sunho received the message from Earth in the middle of the night. He was in his command post, coordinating another defense, when the communication came through. It was encrypted with old military codes. "This is Admiral Taeyang to New Gangwa Ground Forces. Hold on. We're coming. ETA 10 days. Repeat. 10 days. Do whatever it takes to survive. Help is coming." Sunho felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. He called together his commanders. Bora arrived first, covered in dust and blood. She had been fighting for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping, but her eyes were still sharp. "What's the situation?" she asked. "Earth is coming. 10 days. Bora let out a long breath. "Can we last 10 days? "We have to," Sunho said. "We've lasted 3 weeks. What's 10 more days?" Yuna spoke up from her position at the map table. "We're low on ammunition. We're low on food. We're low on everything. The Velrathi are bringing in more troops every day." She looked up. "But we're not out yet. I've got ideas. Nasty ideas." "How nasty?" Sunho asked. Yuna smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "Remember the chemical plant on the east side? I can turn it into the world's largest bomb. Won't kill all of them, but it'll make them think twice about advancing. And do it," Sunho said without hesitation. "Anything else?" Bora spoke up. "The Velrathi are starting to adapt. They're learning to spread out, to move faster. We need to change tactics again. Suggestions? We stop trying to kill them all. We focus on making them afraid. Psychological warfare. Make them understand that even if they win, they'll never feel safe here." Sunho nodded slowly. "Go on. We start taking prisoners, not to be kind, to interrogate them, to learn everything about their species, their fears, their weaknesses." Bora's voice was cold. and then we use that information to break them. Dr. Asul would have been horrified by the conversation. But Dr. Asul was safe on a ship heading toward them. The people in this room were fighting for survival. Morality was a luxury they couldn't afford. Do it, Sunho said. All of it. We hold for 10 days. We make them pay for every meter. And when Earth arrives, we show these Velrathi what happens when you corner humanity. Governor Kiwan entered the room. He looked thin and tired. He had been working non-stop to evacuate civilians and coordinate supplies. I heard the message from Earth, he said. 10 days. We can make it, Sunho assured him. Kiwan looked at the map, at all the red marks indicating Velrathi positions, at the shrinking blue zones of human control. You know what's strange? Kiwan said. I spent my whole life avoiding violence, building instead of destroying. I came here to create something peaceful. He laughed bitterly. And now I'm learning how to make bombs and plan ambushes. You're learning how to protect your people, Sunho corrected. There's no shame in that, isn't there? Kiwan asked. When this is over, when we've won, will we be able to go back to being peaceful? Or will we have become the same as them? Sunho didn't have an answer for that. None of them did. It was the question that haunted every soldier who survived a war. In orbit, the Velrathi fleet commander Korthos received word that human ships were approaching. 60 vessels, armed and moving fast. How long until they arrive? He asked. 10 standard days, Commander. Korthos considered his options. He could stay and fight. His fleet was larger. His weapons were powerful. But something about the humans unnerved him. They fought without honor, without rules, and they had held off his ground forces for 3 weeks with nothing but improvised weapons and desperate courage. Send a message to the Empire, he said. Request fleet reinforcements. Tell them we may need additional support. Sir, that seems excessive. We outnumber them. I thought this colony seemed excessive too, Korthos said. I thought they would surrender immediately. I was wrong. He stared at the planet below, where his soldiers were still dying to farmers and teachers. I don't want to be wrong again. The Third Fleet arrived at New Gangwa exactly 10 days later. They didn't slow down. They didn't announce their presence. They simply dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the combat zone. Weapons already hot, Admiral Taeyang stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Velrathi fleet scramble to respond. The aliens had been expecting a more cautious approach. They had been wrong. All ships, Taeyang ordered, his voice calm. Fire. What happened next would be studied in military academies for decades. The human fleet didn't engage in traditional ship-to-ship combat. They didn't trade broadsides or maneuver for position. Instead, they launched everything at once. Missile swarms, thousands of them, filled the space between the fleets. Each missile was small, cheap, and packed with explosives. The Velrathi point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. For every 10 missiles destroyed, 3 got through. The Velrathi flagship took 17 hits in the first minute. Its shields collapsed. Its hull cracked. Fire bloomed in the vacuum of space. Focus fire on their command ships, Taeyang ordered. Take out their coordination. The human ships moved like sharks, fast and aggressive. They didn't care about taking damage. Every ship had redundant systems, and the crews were trained to keep fighting even as their vessels fell apart around them. Commander Korthos watched in horror as his fleet was torn to pieces. The humans fought without any sense of self-preservation. They rammed damaged ships into Velrathi vessels. They used their own fighters as guided missiles. They accepted casualties that would make any honorable species surrender. Fall back, Korthos ordered. Retreat to. His communication was cut off as a human destroyer slammed directly into his ship's engine section. Both vessels exploded in a ball of white fire. Within 20 minutes, the Velrathi fleet was broken. Half their ships were destroyed. The others were fleeing toward the edge of the system, trailing atmosphere and debris. Should we pursue? The tactical officer asked Taeyang. No, the admiral said. Let them run. Let them report what happened here. Let every Velrathi in the Empire know what happens when you attack humans. He turned to Colonel Jinha, who was preparing with his Marines in the launch bay. Colonel, the sky is yours. Get our people. Jinha's grin was predatory. With pleasure, sir. The orbital drop began at midnight, New Gangwa time. The Velrathi ground forces had no idea it was coming. One moment they were consolidating their positions. The next, the sky was full of falling pods. The pods hit the ground at incredible speeds, using last-second rockets to slow down just enough that the Marines inside wouldn't die from the impact. It was insane. It was dangerous. And it worked. Jinha's pod crashed through the roof of a Velrathi command center. He was out and shooting before the aliens knew what happened. His Marines followed, clearing the building room by room, with practiced efficiency. This is Ground Team 1, Jinha reported. We are on site and engaging. Resistance is confused. That was an understatement. The Velrathi had never experienced an orbital drop. The idea of intentionally falling from space, through atmosphere, and directly into a combat zone was madness. But humans had been doing it since the Mars War. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. 3,000 human Marines landed in the middle of Velrathi positions. They came in hard, they came in fast, and they came in angry. Bora heard the pods falling and smiled. She had been fighting alone for so long. Now, she had backup. She keyed her radio. Human forces, this is Bora. I'm at grid position 7-3. I have eyes on a Velrathi artillery position. Requesting fire support. Roger that. Bora, a new voice responded. It was deep and confident. This is Sergeant Minho. 2nd Battalion. We've got your back. Mark the target. Bora used her laser designator to paint the Velrathi guns. Seconds later, missiles rained down from orbit. The artillery position disappeared in fire and smoke. Good shooting, Bora said. Thank you, ma'am. Now stay put. We're coming to you. Bora had been alone for a month, fighting, hiding, surviving on her own. The relief she felt hearing those words was overwhelming. 5 minutes later, a squad of Marines reached her position. They were young, fresh, and eager. They looked at her like she was a legend. You're Bora? One of them asked. The one who held the East Sector alone for 3 weeks? Someone had to, she said simply. Ma'am, we have orders to evacuate you to the safe zone. Bora laughed. It was a harsh sound. Evacuate? I'm not done yet. She picked up her rifle. You want to help? Follow me. I know where every Velrathi position is. Let's clean them out. The young Marines looked at each other, then followed. They had trained for war. She had lived it. They would learn from her. Sunho met Colonel Jinha in the ruins of the old school. Both men were covered in dirt and blood. They shook hands like old friends. Though they had never met. You held them off for a month, Jinha said. With farmers and teachers. That's impressive doesn't cover it. We did what we had to, Sunho replied. But we're glad you're here. We were down to our last ammunition. Where do you need us? Sunho pulled out a map. It was covered in marks and notes. The Velrathi have 2,000 soldiers left. They're concentrated here. In the valley, they've been trying to break through to the civilian shelters. What's your recommendation? We surround them. Cut off their retreat. Then we give them one chance to surrender. Sunho's eyes were hard. Just one. Just one, Jinha nodded. And if they don't take it? Then we show them why humans survived 10,000 years of war. The battle for the valley began at dawn. Human forces moved into position during the night, using the same stealth tactics the colonists had employed for weeks. By the time the sun rose, the Velrathi were surrounded. Colonel Jinha sent the message himself. Velrathi forces, this is Colonel Jinha of the United Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded. Your fleet is destroyed. Your escape is cut off. Lay down your weapons and you will be treated according to the laws of war. You have 1 hour to comply. Rans. The Velrathi commander in the valley was a warrior named Greshak. He was proud, he was honorable, and he was not going to surrender to what he considered inferior creatures. "We are Velrathi," he told his soldiers. "We do not surrender. We fight to the last." It was a brave decision. It was also a fatal one. When the hour expired, the human forces opened fire from every direction. Artillery from orbit, missiles from the air, rifles and machine guns from the ground. The Velrathi tried to form defensive lines, but there was nowhere to hide. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was brutal and one-sided. The Velrathi fought well, but they were outmatched, outgunned, and out of options. When it was over, 1,800 Velrathi were dead. 200 had managed to surrender. Despite their commander's orders, Greshak himself was found in a crater, still holding his weapon, dead from a dozen bullet wounds. Human casualties: 43 Marines killed, 97 wounded. Dr. Isul walked through the aftermath with a sick feeling in her stomach. She had seen battle reports. She had studied war. But seeing the reality was different. Bodies everywhere. The smell of burned flesh. The sounds of wounded soldiers crying for help. This was what humanity did when you threatened their people. She found Colonel Jinha sitting on a broken wall, staring at nothing. "Colonel," she said softly, "are you all right?" "I'm fine, Doctor. You don't look fine." Jinha turned to her. His eyes were tired. "We just killed 1,800 beings. Killed them efficiently, brutally, and without mercy. And I don't feel bad about it. Should that worry you?" "Ah." Isul sat down beside him. "Do you know why they died? Because they refused to surrender." "No, they died because their leaders told them humans were weak. They died because someone made a bad assumption." She looked at the battlefield. "The tragedy isn't that we're good at killing. It's that we have to be." "That's a dark philosophy, Doctor." "It's a human philosophy," she replied. "We don't start fights. But we finish them." On the flagship, Admiral Taeyang received the final casualty reports. Over the month-long battle, New Ganghwa had lost 450 civilians and 230 fighters. The UEDF had lost 78 Marines and crew. The Velrathi had lost over 3,000 soldiers and 30 ships. "Send a message to Earth," Taeyang ordered. "New Ganghwa is secure. The colony is safe." He paused, then added, "And send a message to the Velrathi Empire. Tell them we have 200 prisoners. They can send an unarmed ship to retrieve them, but if they ever attack a human colony again, we won't take prisoners next time." The cleanup took weeks. Human engineers arrived to rebuild what had been destroyed. Medical teams treated the wounded. Counselors came to help with the trauma. Bora found herself sitting in a rebuilt cafe, drinking coffee with other veterans. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. They all understood what had happened here. A young girl approached their table. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. "Are you the soldiers who saved us?" she asked. Bora nodded. "We are." "Thank you," the girl said, then ran back to her mother. Bora watched her go. The girl would grow up. She would have a life. She would be safe. "Worth it?" asked Minho, the sergeant who had fought beside her. Bora thought about the question, about the nightmares she would have, about the Velrathi she had killed, about the line she had crossed and could never uncross. "Yeah," she said finally, "worth it." Governor Kiwan stood in front of a memorial being built in the center of Sabiok. It would list the names of everyone who died defending New Ganghwa. 450 civilians, 230 soldiers. 700 names that represented 700 stories that would never be finished. Sunho stood beside him. "We'll rebuild," the former major said. "We always do." "Will we, though?" Kiwan asked. "Or have we become something different now?" "Maybe both," Sunho said. "We'll rebuild, but we'll also remember. We'll be peaceful, but we won't be defenseless." Kiwan nodded slowly. It wasn't the future he had wanted, but it was the future they had earned. Above them, human ships patrolled the orbit. They would stay for months, making sure the Velrathi didn't return, making sure New Ganghwa could sleep safely again. The galaxy had learned a lesson. Humanity had learned a darker one. Peace was precious, but survival was paramount. And if the choice was between being kind or being alive, humans would choose alive every single time. The Galactic Council Chamber was the most impressive structure on the station. It held representatives from 200 species, all gathered under a dome that showed the stars beyond. For 1,000 years, this chamber had been used to settle disputes peacefully. Today, it would serve a different purpose. Admiral Taeyang walked into the chamber, flanked by 2 Marines. He wore his full dress uniform. Every medal he had earned, every ribbon that represented a battle fought. He wanted the council to see exactly who they were dealing with. The council speaker, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Omelon, addressed him first. Admiral Taeyang of Earth, you stand before this council to answer for your actions at New Gangwa. You engaged in military action without council approval. You destroyed a Velrathi fleet. You killed thousands of Velrathi soldiers. I did, Taeyang said simply. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just confirmed the facts. The Velrathi Empire has filed a complaint. They say you acted with excessive force, that you violated the laws of warfare. Taeyang felt anger rise in his chest, but his voice stayed calm. The Velrathi attacked a civilian colony without warning. They killed over 400 humans, including children. They refused to negotiate. And when we arrived to defend our people, they refused to surrender. He looked around the chamber. So yes, I destroyed their fleet, and I would do it again. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some species looked shocked. Others looked frightened. The Velrathi representative, a scarred warrior named Corvin, stood up. The humans are violent savages, Corvin declared. They fight without honor. They use weapons designed only to kill. They refuse to follow the proper protocols of warfare. Proper protocols? Taeyang repeated. You mean the rules that you followed when you bombed farms from orbit? When you killed civilians who had no weapons? He stepped forward. Let me explain something to this council. Humanity has been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We've perfected it. We've studied it. And we've learned that honor means nothing to dead soldiers. You prove my point, Corvin said. You are warmongers, killers who... We wanted peace! Taeyang's shout echoed through the chamber. The sudden volume made several species flinch. We sent colonists to New Gangwa to farm, to build families, to live quietly. They were veterans who had seen war and chose peace. And you attacked them anyway. He pulled out a datapad and threw it toward the council's display screen. Images appeared. Burned farms, dead children, destroyed homes. These are the people you killed, Taeyang said. Farmers, teachers, parents. They weren't soldiers anymore. They weren't threats. They were just trying to live. His voice dropped to something cold and hard. You made them into soldiers again. That's on you. Omelon tried to restore order. Admiral, this council understands your anger. But, no you don't, Taeyang interrupted. None of you do. Because none of you have ever faced extinction. You make rules about warfare because war is a game to you, a contest with points and winners. He looked around the chamber. For humans, war is survival. When we fight to live. We don't stop when it's honorable. We stop when we've won. A small, insect-like representative stood up. Are you saying humans will not follow the galactic laws of war? I'm saying we'll follow them when the other side does, Taeyang replied. The Velrathi didn't follow any laws when they attacked New Gangwa. So we didn't either. He paused. If you want us to fight nice, don't attack our civilians. It's simple. The Velrathi representative, Corvan, spoke again. Your species is dangerous. You should be contained. Restricted from expansion. You're welcome to try, Taeyang said softly. But I should warn you, we've been fighting each other for millennia. Fighting you would be easier. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species demanded humanity be sanctioned. Others wanted to understand how humanity had won so decisively. A few, the quieter ones, were already calculating trade agreements and alliances. Omolan eventually restored order. This council will deliberate on the new Ganghwa incident. Admiral Taeyang. You will wait outside while we discuss. Taeyang nodded and left. In the hallway outside, he found Colonel Jinha waiting with Dr. Isol. How did it go? Jinha asked. They're scared of us now, Taeyang said. Good. Is it good? Isul asked. We came to the galaxy wanting to be part of the community. Now they fear us. Fear and respect look similar from a distance, Taeyang replied. Right now, I'll take either. Oh, back in the chamber, the council debated for hours. The species were divided. Some wanted to punish humanity for their violence. Others recognized that the Velrathi had started the conflict. A reptilian representative named Sothek spoke up. He was old, his scales gray with age. I fought in the Velrathi wars before they joined the council. I know how they operate. They attack weak species, subjugate them, and expand their empire. He looked around. The humans did not start this fight. They finished it. There's a difference. But their methods, another representative started. Their methods kept them alive, Sothek interrupted. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we've been safe for so long. We've forgotten what it takes to survive against a real threat. The debate continued, but slowly, a consensus emerged. Humanity would not be punished. The Velrathi Empire would be censured for attacking without provocation, and the laws about attacking civilian colonies would be strengthened. When Taeyang was called back in, Omolan delivered the verdict. The council has decided that humanity acted in self-defense. No sanctions will be applied. However, we strongly urge Earth to consider the broader implications of their military actions. Noted, Taeyang said. He didn't promise to change anything. He just noted the concern. As he left the chamber, a small delegation approached him. They represented 3 minor species who had been conquered by larger empires in the past. Admiral, their leader said quietly, our worlds would like to discuss defense agreements with Earth. We've seen what happens when we're attacked. We've seen what you did to protect your people. She paused. We want that kind of protection. Taeyang considered this. We're not mercenaries. We don't fight other people's wars. We're not asking you to fight for us. We're asking you to teach us to fight for ourselves. The way you do. Taeyang looked at Jinha, who shrugged. We could use allies. The colonel said. Fine, Taeyang agreed. Send representatives to Earth. We'll talk. The news of what happened at New Ganghwa spread through the galaxy faster than light. Within weeks, every species knew the story. Humans, the young species that everyone had dismissed, had defeated a Velrathi fleet. They had done it quickly, efficiently, and brutally. Trade routes began avoiding Velrathi space and moving through human territory. Diplomatic messages poured into Earth from species wanting to open relations. Some wanted alliances, others just wanted to make sure they stayed on humanity's good side. The Velrathi Empire, once proud and expansionist, became cautious. They stopped attacking weaker species. They became quiet, and at night, Velrathi soldiers would tell stories about the humans who fought without honor, without mercy, and without stopping until they had won. On New Ganghwa, life slowly returned to normal. The farms were rebuilt, the schools reopened. Children played in the streets again, but there were differences now. Every town had a militia training ground. Every adult knew how to use a weapon. And in the center of Sibyok, the memorial stood as a reminder. Bora stood in front of that memorial, reading the names carved into the stone. She came here every morning. It was her routine now. Her way of remembering. A young woman approached her. It was Juri, the musician who had picked up a rifle during the battle. Do you still have nightmares? Juri asked. Every night, Bora admitted. You? Every night, Juri echoed. Does it get easier? No. But you learn to carry it. Bora looked at the memorial. We fought so others could live in peace. That has to mean something. Does it make us heroes or monsters? Bora smiled sadly. Maybe both. Maybe that's what it takes to survive. Across town, Sunho was teaching a class. Not history this time. Military strategy. The students were colonists who wanted to learn how to defend their homes. The attack had changed everyone. They couldn't go back to being innocent. After class, Governor Kiwan visited him. The governor had aged more in the past months than in the previous decade. The weight of command had marked him. The council has offered us additional security, Kiwan said. Ships will patrol our system. We'll have warning if anyone approaches. Good, Sunho said. But we should still train. Should still prepare. I know. I just wish. Kiwan trailed off. Wish what? I wish we could go back to before, when we were just farmers. Sunho shook his head. We were never just farmers. We were soldiers who wanted to be farmers. The Velrathi just reminded us what we really are. And what are we? Survivors, Sunho said simply. We survive. That's what humans do. On Earth, a new memorial was being built next to the one commemorating the Mars War. It was simple. A black stone wall with names carved into it. The names of everyone who died at New Gangwa, civilian and soldier alike. At the dedication ceremony, thousands gathered. Among them were families of the fallen, veterans of the Mars War, and curious citizens who wanted to understand what happened. Admiral Taeyang gave the speech. He kept it short. We built this memorial for 2 reasons, he said. First, to remember those who died. They wanted peace. They earned peace. They deserved peace. But when war found them, they fought back. They held the line. They survived long enough for help to arrive. He paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. The second reason is a warning. To ourselves and to the galaxy. We are human. We prefer peace. We choose diplomacy. We value life. His voice hardened. But if you attack us, if you threaten our people, if you mistake our kindness for weakness, we will respond, not with honor, not with restraint, but with everything we have. He gestured to the memorial. This wall says, never again, in 200 languages. Every species in the galaxy can read it. Every species should understand what it means. We tried to join the galactic community as friends. We still want that. But we're done being tested. We're done proving ourselves. From now on, humanity stands as equals. Not because we ask permission, but because we've earned it. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. Not because they celebrated war, but because they understood survival. That night, transmissions left Earth carrying the same message to every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple. It was translated into every known language. It was broadcast on every channel. We are human. We wanted peace. You brought war. Learn from the Velrathi. Don't make their mistake. In the Velrathi Empire, in the halls of power, the military leaders gathered to discuss what happened. They had lost a fleet, lost 3,000 soldiers, lost their reputation. What should we do about the humans? A young officer asked. The oldest general in the room, a warrior who had conquered 15 worlds, spoke quietly. We leave them alone. We avoid their space. We forget New Gangwa ever happened. But our honor? The general interrupted. We attacked farmers and they destroyed us. Our honor died at New Gangwa. All we have left is survival. He looked around the table. The humans fight like they have nothing to lose, because to them, losing means extinction. We fight for territory and glory. They fight for existence. We can't win against that, so we just surrender? No. We remember. We adapt. And we never, ever attack humans again. The message spread through the Velrathi Empire. Through all the aggressive species that had considered humans weak, a new understanding emerged. Humans were not prey. They were not victims. They were apex predators pretending to be civilized. And pretending only worked until you gave them a reason to stop pretending. Years later, a young human named Donby sat in a history class on Earth. Her teacher was explaining the Battle of New Gangwa. Donby listened carefully. Her grandmother had been there. Had fought, had survived. Why did they attack us? Donby asked. If we're so dangerous? The teacher smiled. Because they didn't know. They saw us trying to be peaceful and thought we were weak. They learned better. Are we the bad guys? No. But we're not entirely good either. We're human. We're complicated. The teacher pulled up images of the New Gangwa Memorial. We prefer peace, but we're very, very good at war. The galaxy knows that now. Is that a good thing? It's a survival thing, the teacher said. And sometimes, that's all that matters. In the end, the Battle of New Gangwa changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. They were no longer the new species, no longer the ones seeking acceptance. They were respected, feared, and cautiously befriended. And somewhere, on a rebuilt farm on New Gangwa, Bora planted apple trees. The same trees that Captain Doyon had wanted to see grow. She watered them, cared for them, watched them bloom. She would probably never stop having nightmares. Would never forget the faces of the Velrathi she killed. Would never be the person she was before the war. But the trees grew. Children played beneath them. Life continued. And that, she decided, was worth fighting for. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity remembered theirs. Peace was precious. Life was sacred. But survival was paramount. And humans would always, always survive.